Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, Moms for Liberty protests against gender ideology in Gaithersburg. County Council bans sale and use of gas-powered leaf blowers. What is the school board hiding? And rest in peace, Brooks Robinson. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by former County Council member and president at Rebuilding Together Montgomery County, Nancy Floreen, and a member of the Montgomery County Republican Central Committee, Stacey Sauter. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. The parental rights movement began to take form 2 years ago in Fairfax and Loudoun counties, Virginia, as protests against some of the social policies that were being enacted in the public school systems. With the success of the election of Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, who seized on the parental rights issue in his campaign, it was a question of when, not if, the parental rights issue would begin to play a major role in Maryland and Montgomery County politics. Earlier this year, a lawsuit was filed over the Montgomery County public school system's refusal to allow parents to opt their children out of classes with LGBTQ lessons, which lost in the Federal District Court of Maryland and is now being appealed in the Fourth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals. But this past week, the Montgomery County chapter of Moms for Liberty, an American conservative political organization that advocates against school curricula that mentions LGBT rights and discriminations, protested gender ideology across from Gaithersburg High School. Nancy, Adam Pagnucco wrote in his political blog that the parental rights movement is growing in the country and could be a major issue in next year's school board elections. Do you agree with that assessment?
Number one, Montgomery County is not Virginia. This is a far more liberal community. I looked up this group online. Montgomery, it did not identify a Montgomery County chapter. Now, perhaps that's new, but it was not on their online website. Do you know what they want removed from our schools? They want the inauguration poem by Amanda Gorman removed, Of Mice and Men, John Steinbeck, The Color Purple, Alice Walker, To Kill a Mockingbird, Fahrenheit 451, and my favorite, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Now, who are these people, number one? Who are they to tell me what my children should be exposed to? And frankly, I don't think these are on anybody's particular reading list. These are just options that are available to our students in the school. If you don't want to be in the school system, you don't have to be in the school system. But don't tell me what my children can be exposed to. I find these groups offensive. Parental rights, we all have them. We exercise those rights at home.
But Nancy, your argument about not wanting your children to be, or not being wanted to told what your children can read, is the same argument that these groups are making. And these groups are growing in number and in strength. And we are seeing, 3 years ago, this wasn't a topic on anybody's mind that this would happen and occur in Montgomery County. It has been growing. There was a small push during the last school board elections. A couple of candidates tried to dance around the issue. We had the candidate Dan Cox make it a part of his campaign for governor. So this is not an issue that should be dismissed.
One of the other key points that people tend to forget is the Board of Education is not a county agency. It's a product of the state. The rules are set by the State Board of Education, not locally. So the opt-out issue was a state issue and highly regulated by the state of Maryland, not by Montgomery County. People think that do not understand the division of responsibility between the various jurisdictions, and that clouds the advocacy, and it confuses the issue for many, many people.
Well, just as we saw in Virginia, we saw that most of those issues, you're correct, may be a state issue. It ended up electing a Republican in the state house. But I want to go to Stacey on this because Nancy makes a great point. Maryland is a liberal state. Montgomery County is a liberal state. And to show that, earlier this year, the Maryland General Assembly passed the Trans Health Equity Act, which expanded access to gender affirming care throughout the state. So this indicates that a majority of Marylanders are in support of such care. How important will this issue of parental rights play in the next election?
Well, to the first point, you cannot assume that anything that has been passed by the supermajority legislature has supermajority support across the state of Maryland. This is a body politic that has great agency in this state because they have a machine, they have an agenda, and they have a script, and they have the power to pass whatever they want. This is why you have groups like Moms for Liberty fomenting in this area, because they're saying, no, this is not what we want for our children. And so you see this in Montgomery County going on right now, that parents have natural rights where their kids are concerned, and they're just out there trying to protect them. So the issue that I see principally is that there's not enough dialogue or transparency with the parents. You're going to talk about a sports great in Maryland, Brooks Robinson, coming up. We have another sports great here, and that's John Harbaugh, who is the coach of the Baltimore Ravens. He's a servant leader. And that man loves to ask his players, what do you think? And this is what's missing from the equation in all of this right now. Parents are not being asked what they think. They're right now coming forward and demanding that they be heard.
Well, Nancy, I don't think it's a surprise that parents want involvement in the decisions that are being made at the schools.
If I could comment, I mean, Casey, your kids went to Catholic schools, right?
No,
They did.
That's fine. You made a choice. My kids
Right.
went to a variety of different schools. I don't know about Stacey, if you have children or where they've attended school, but I do think parents, of course, they have a right to determine what they want their children exposed to. But when you have your child in the public school system, you're stuck with the public school system, which has incredible benefits and other challenges. And that's one of the trade-offs. That's what you pay for in the private school: more engagement, more ownership of the conversation.
but you
So
just hit on a
these
key
are all
point.
trade-off things.
Nancy,
Well-
you just hit on a key point, and that's being stuck. That the parents feel like they're
This is
stuck.
life. Yeah, no, it's
No,
not being
that's-
stuck, but we're not even talking about things that children are actually doing. This is like a conceptual thing. It's not like anyone's forcing them to read any of the books I just listed, that I think most of us thinking people would say these are basically Pulitzer Prize type material that people should be exposed to. Like it or not. I don't like what you think. Oh, well, let me hear about it at least. And that is
Grace,
the
I'll give you,
challenge with our
we're
population.
coming up to a break.
Don't shut out a portion of the conversation. I'm going to listen to people I disagree with. And that's the point of this conversation, right?
Yeah, but
Stacey, I'll give you the last word. We have about 30 seconds.
yeah, you know what, the old saying, democracy dies in darkness. No, it doesn't. It dies in silence. And parents have a right to speak up, and they have a right to be heard, and they have a right to be respected. And so, Nancy, you can say you're open-minded and that you will listen to them. But if you're the one in authority and you're the final decision maker, then you can take a so what, who cares attitude. Too bad.
Well, see, this is a topic that I love because my old chestnut, which I push, and Nancy, you're right. I sent my kids to parochial schools and to Catholic high schools, and I paid for that. But I think that we should have school choice in Maryland and give out vouchers for everyone so they can take their tax dollars and use them to educate their children the way they want. That's my topic. I beat it to death every week, and someday we're going to see a movement in that regard. So we got to go on to our next topic, and this is what I was speaking to Stacey last night when I was describing the topics. I said this next topic is one that is just a complete rant on my part, and that is the always self-congratulatory Montgomery County Council. This week they enacted legislation that will prohibit the sale, not just the sale, but the use of combustion engine powered leaf blowers as an important step to addressing environmental noise and health concerns in our community. Nancy, I know that barn door, the horse has been stolen out of the barn and this is already gone. But the argument has long been the gas powered leaf blowers cause an environmental hazard. They're hardly used in reality. They're used a fraction of the time. What do you
Well, if
think?
we're up to me, I would ban them all. What's wrong with the rake is my view. This noise is outrageous. It's terrible. It's disruptive, but that's my personal rant. Look, if something like this had been passed any place in the country, I think it's been passed in a variety of other jurisdictions. This particular council is going to introduce it and adopt it here. I just hope they don't get to pressure washers, which I just discovered, and are wonderful devices for cleaning things, and you need a lot of power, and they're noisy. So I shouldn't have said that because some of them are gas powered as well. And that is the challenge here in Montgomery County. Our
So
people
you
want
should
to
be allowed to use a gas powered power washer if you want to, Nancy, and they're going to come after you now that they know. Now that
I
they know,
know, I know. It's.
Stacey,
I think they should just issue a rake to everybody and say, get over it and get some exercise.
I tried to use a push lawnmower a few years ago and I almost killed myself. I couldn't do it. I'm so fat and out of shape. Stacey,
Oh,
not only does the county want to take away the freedom of choice on lawn maintenance equipment, but they're going to take your tax dollars to pay me to replace it. Does that make any sense?
Well, yes and no. First of all, Casey, they're not going to be giving out an abundance of money. They have a $300,000 line item in the budget as grants. And so that means that the first 1,000 people for the next 3 years that apply for a grant will get $100. But those electric leaf blowers cost between $100 and $1,000. And then you have to buy the accessory equipment, and the backup batteries. So this is a very expensive proposition, not just for the homeowner, the average homeowner, but if you're a professional commercial landscaper, your costs are going to go up 5 times to replace that equipment. And that, of course, is going to get passed on to the consumer. And if those commercial landscapers can't afford to pay for that aspect of it, what's going to happen? They lay off employees. When employees get laid off, that's going to hurt the economy. So all around, this is a bad idea. I look at it as a grudge cudgel. You can use this against your neighbors if you don't like them. And Casey, I told you last night, the simplest way to get rid of this environmental nuisance is to get rid of the gas bags on the county council.
Well, we now that Nancy's no longer on the county council, we can all agree with you. When we got to go to break. And welcome back. For months, much of the county's attention has been on the continuing sexual harassment complaint and the ensuing promotion of the former Paint Branch High School principal. A particular concern is the failure by the Montgomery County Board of Education to address questions that the public had. In an interview with Fox 5 reporter Tom Fitzgerald, County Executive Mark Elrich criticized the silence of the school board. He said, to not express some kind of concern, I don't understand. You should be able to say, yes, there ought to be an investigation. There ought to be consequences if we find that people in the administration, in the school system, covered things up or weren't forthcoming. Nancy, today there was some reports about a hearing that was conducted yesterday with the school board superintendent and the head of the school board before the county council. Has the school board and the superintendent handled this scandal properly?
Well, number one, these are allegations. Number two, the person involved has been put on leave. Number three, you're an attorney, I'm an attorney. What would you tell your client to say about this thing? It's being dealt with. What's interesting to me about this, there are 160,000 kids in the Montgomery County school system, plus or minus. They've got 25,000 plus employees. And what are we talking about for the past 3 months? One person. This person, I saw a picture of him in a post. He's Black. that probably complicates their analysis. Paintbrush High School is 60% Black kids, 23% Hispanic, 11% Asian. That was last year. The numbers are probably a little different right now, but around there. So they have a very diverse school. There are 8% male principals or administrators in the whole system. In the whole system, 7% of the principals and administrators are Black. It's a whole nother kettle of fish for the school board to deal with. So, it's a complicated situation again for them. And remember, as I keep saying, this is a state agency. So they can be hauled up. They can be polite. They can respond to questions to the extent that they can. But as their attorney, I would advise them to keep their mouths shut until it's finally resolved. I'm sure it will be handled. It's being handled in some way at this point. You're never going to know all the details, and you of all people would know that, Casey, as an attorney. This is not a public forum particularly. Know that the issues have been raised and they have been tentatively they're being looked at. People are going to go for the platform to say things. The council has an obligation to do something. The county executive was asked something. He said something, not much. That's that hassle. That's the challenge of being within a legal system where there are ramifications each way.
Well, Stacey, yesterday it was revealed in the hearings that Monifa McKnight was not aware of these allegations when she promoted the gentleman to be principal at Paintbrush High School. So there seems to be a lot of questions, again, as to how the process within MCPS was conducted, and questions as to whether or not, and Nancy correctly points out, there are privacy issues involved here that have to be respected. But shouldn't there be more forthcoming information from the school board?
Absolutely. And I can't speak for Monifa McKnight, and I did hear that that's what her claim is. So I'm going to believe her. But the question is, who knew and when? And that's what the inspector general needs to get to right now. And Nancy, you just mentioned a moment ago, you're an attorney, and Casey, you are as well. And if you are with the Jackson Lewis law firm that had been called in initially to investigate this, I would imagine that you two probably would have said, this is not a good idea because we've been counseling you on other subjects and defending you on these other subjects and taking an arm's length approach to this. And Nancy, I also don't believe that because the presumed perpetrator here is Black, that he's getting extra protection for this. You had 18 complainants come forward, whether they did it initially by anonymously or speaking up, and this was basically swept under the rug. So the question again is, who knew? Why didn't they reveal this? It reminds me very much of the Penn State fiasco that happened when Jerry Sandusky was finally convicted of child molestation. And the person who first saw him molesting a child in a shower in a locker room and reported it to the godfather of football, Joe Paterno, then Paterno took it to the athletic director, who took it to the chief of security at Penn State. What did they do? They swept it under the rug. And so these things eventually come out. And this is, unfortunately, Montgomery County right now has a branding issue. They've got a branding issue with parents in this county, and now they have a branding issue because of this particular issue. They have a lot of issues, and they are riding on the fumes of their once illustrious reputation. They have a lot of work to do. And by the way, where are the teachers' unions in all of this? Why aren't the teachers' unions in there defending these teachers? Why? Because they're spending their energy going after all the parents out there that are the far more formidable predators in their minds.
Well, thank you, Stacey. This again, I will tell you from my experience that sexual harassment allegations in an organization are some of the most sensitive issues, because people make false allegations, but they also are true allegations, and they're generally treated with great respect and great sensitivity by the organization. Nonetheless, I do think the school board, through its own actions, hasn't handled this very well or very skillfully. They could have done better. So, but there's
I hope at some point we get to talk about what's really going on, which is how are our kids doing on reading scores?
That's
How are we measuring success? How are 160,000 kids doing? We get distracted by these little itty bitty things, and nobody pays attention to the big picture. Good for them, bad for us.
well, Nancy, I think that's a great way to conclude this, which is we need to focus on performance of our students and what is being taught to them going forward. Now we got to go on to our last topic. We only have a few minutes for this, but for those of us who grew up in the Washington D.C. area, they remember the great legend of Brooks Robinson, and it's not often that a professional athlete is honored for his accomplishments, but also for his demeanor when dealing with the public. And that's a high bar to accomplish. And those who got to see Brooks Robinson play third base, especially in the 1970 World Series when he was named MVP, they know he was the epitome of professionalism. And it's not just that Brooks Robinson had 16 straight Golden Glove awards or is being chosen 18 times as an All-Star. It was his accessibility that made him so great and loved by the community. So I don't know if either of you, Stacey, you probably were too young. You don't remember him. And so Nancy, any thoughts about
No,
the great?
I'm a little surprised you're not wearing a Brooks Robinson shirt, though.
You know,
It clashed with the tie. That
Yeah.
that
Oh,
that Oriole orange clashed.
yeah.
Couldn't wear
Casey,
it.
I mentioned John Harbaugh a little bit ago, and in the same vein, that what you have in these individuals is that they are a class act. And that's what's missing by and large in so many sectors of society, is that they don't break the norms. They treat people fairly. And I'd love to see that kind of mentality come back in our education system, in our politics and sports. It's very refreshing that you're honoring him today.
It's great to have wonderful role models that you can think about as you go forward. We got a break now. Ran out of time. Stay tuned for Parting Shots. Now with Parting Shots, Nancy Floreen.
Well, fall is upon us. Given our conversation we've had today, I would encourage people to get out a rake, and get some exercise, deal with your falling leaves in a environmentally sensitive way. Don't annoy your neighbors with your noisy leaf blowers, please. That's my number one request. And be kind. There's not enough of that these days. Just be kind.
Thank you, Nancy. Stacey Sauter, I want to welcome you again. And now it's time for your first parting shot.
Well, thank you. I am here representing the Republican Party, and I would like to let the viewers out there know that we have a lot of efforts going on underway in Montgomery County to get out the vote. The RNC is currently running a campaign to bank your vote. And so we are encouraging people to sign up for the mail-in ballot. And we hope that they will pay attention to what's going on with the Republican Party by going to our website at mcgop.com.
Thank you, Stacey. And Nancy and Stacey, thank you for appearing. I appreciate your taking your time to do this. I want to thank the audience for tuning in to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.